Hello and welcome to the Alt-ernative podcast. Today we've got Andre with us, who we've met through Alt Media. He also has a podcast as well, which we're going to ask him about in a moment. But I just want to give a quick shout out. We just earlier on in the call, we're talking about Mark Steves and how he's put together a great sort of website, great community called Alt Media. I'll leave the details of it in the description below. But that's what's given us a chance to sort of interview these great guests that we've been having on lately and what we're going to have today. So, Andre, tell us a bit about your podcast, why you started it, where the name came from, because that's something I'm definitely interested in, and just a bit about your journey into podcasting.
Yeah, man. To start off, like I'm just a regular guy. Always, was questioning from a kid or as a little kid, always getting told I was asking too many questions, and it would always end up in like because I said so, and that answer never set well with me. And just growing up that way, raised in Catholic school, just kind of questioning the status quo of things and like, who am I? What is my purpose here? What's the world all about? Like seeing ongoing wars in the world and stuff like that. Like stuff that like didn't make sense to me growing up. Just starting to ask those deeper questions. And that kind of set me on my own journey and, a spiritual journey. Just trying to make sense of what to believe in as far as is there a higher power behind all this? Like, is there a creator? Do I need church anymore? Like, is church really serving my highest purpose in this life as far as like what I'm getting from it and what I'm giving to it? And that took some trials and tribulations, but ultimately I got into podcasts back in 2012, or around there. It started with my buddy introducing me to the Joe Rogan experience, which obviously Joe is like a huge renegade in podcasting. And to see, him get the big Spotify deal in the last couple of years was, I think, it speaks to like what you can accomplish within the podcasting realm. Although Joe already had clout and fame before, the podcast, he did just start it in his basement, not really taking it seriously. And to see what it's grown into is like pretty miraculous. But so that was the first podcast I got introduced to, and then like getting more into stuff I was interested in, whether it was conspiracies or spirituality, these sorts of taboo subjects. It was deep inside the rabbit hole with it was Tim Rothschild, David Weiss, and Mike Cannon, comedian from New York, and they just had such a unique dynamic to the conversation. I mean, you had comedic skeptic and Mike Cannon. You had a hardcore conspiracy theorist, flat Earth, now known as like a big flat earther, Dave Weiss, and then Tim Rothschild. Like, forget his name; he's adopted. Like, he's not tied to the family, but he was like the spiritual mystic of the bunch. So you had like these three different perspectives, and like just the way they could create such a awesome conversation that you felt like you were a part of. And I think that's the unique thing about podcasting is, when you feel like you don't have a community, whether it's on taboo subjects or like mundane subjects, that you just don't have any like-minded individuals around you that you can like bounce ideas off of, have open conversations with. Like, it allowed you to be a part of a conversation in a bigger community that you might not have known was out there before you got into podcasts. And that's how it felt for me. It just gave me a sense of community that I was missing. Because, when I would talk to a lot of my friends about this, when I was first, getting turned on to certain things, a lot of them looked at me like I was crazy or like, what the hell are you talking about? And, I just couldn't like get anywhere with them. So like, I started to gain some allies and friends locally where, I could have open-minded conversations, and that's grown and grown and grown. And, It's been a beautiful experience to and take part in and witness. But that's where it all started. Were those two shows, and then some other big ones for me were London Real and Tinfoil Hat. Early on, as far as like the ones I was really listening to on a regular basis and really enjoying, and kind of thinking like, man, I really could do this too. Like I was, gaining friends and community around me locally, where I was having these conversations like on a nightly basis, just, passing a doobie around and like having a intellectual discussion. Like I was like, man, we need to start recording these. And for the longest time, like I was always waiting for like my friends to like, hold my hand and like walk me to the finish line of, all right, today we're starting a podcast. And it was always like, okay, our schedules didn't match up, or like they weren't taking it as seriously as I was, or vice versa. We couldn't agree on a name, whatever it was. Like it just didn't manifest how I saw it happening as much as I wanted it to. And there was like a group of four guys I was, conversating with about this, like just to start recording a podcast. And then part of the resistance too early on was like, well, I need all this recording equipment. I have no expertise in audio engineering or any of that. I was starting completely from scratch. And once I realized like, oh, I have a smartphone, I have a laptop in my pocket, I could literally record a podcast right now if I wanted to. Like that's when I stopped making the excuses. But around that time, I had done my first ayahuasca ceremony as well, which really opened me up to my potential, and broke open a new found confidence within me, to speak my truth and share my truth and not be afraid of what others thought anymore. And really just unapologetically just being myself, and putting my mark here on earth, and like leaving a legacy that I can look back on and say like, well, I can wait around and wait for my friends to do this with me, or I can just do it and stop making excuses and stop getting in my own way. Because when you take a look in the mirror and like start to identify your shadows and like what makes you tick, your triggers, like all these things that you've been running from your whole life, whether it started in childhood, whatever, I think that's where the awakening journey comes full circle, is like looking outside externally of like, what are the problems with the world? It comes back to you, and you start saying, okay, what are the problems with me? Or what are like poisons I've ingested throughout my life, philosophically, metaphorically speaking, of like, I'm infecting others with this, and I'm further infecting myself by like holding on to it and not letting go of it. And that was a major help too, is just like getting out of my own way and like taking that leap of faith. And to find out, dude, like I think it was like Terrence McKenna said, you dive into the abyss, you're only to find out that it's a bed full of feathers or something like that. Like you like have all this anxiety and fear of what it's going to be. You're like, I can't do this. Like, what are people going to think? What is my family going to think? What are my friends going to think? Like, am I going to be a complete failure? Like, are people going to like this? Are people even going to listen to this? But like, you got to get past that to like just put yourself out there and do the damn thing. And that's exactly what I did, man. And like, I quickly found out that like, I think we're raised to think like it's just this dog eat dog world, and it's a survivalist mentality, and everyone's out to get each other. And I think you see that a lot in like the sales world and a lot of the matrix systems that exist, within career paths and all that. But I found out within the podcast realm, man, like everyone was looking to help out everyone else. And it was completely the opposite of what I was used to. And that was so refreshing early on, and really kept me going forward. And, once the calendar started filling up and you see, well, I'm booked for months out, like I have no other choice but to keep going with this. And that kept me motivated and kept me inspired. And, you know, just to be doing it, you know, sometimes you had to pinch yourself, like, am I dreaming? Because some of the people you get to talk to, it's like literally you would never in a million years get to speak to some of these people had you not had a podcast as the medium to get you there and to like facilitate that space to have that conversation. And, you know, I just treated every guest as if they were just another human being, man, not put them on a pedestal, see them as a reflection of myself. And for me, you asked about the name. I'll get to that as well. I know this is a long answer to your question, but the name came about in a poem I had wrote many years ago. You know, that's kind of a creative outlet for me, is writing poetry. And I wrote down that rhyme in the poem. It was like, this is the ascension of the chessmen. And to me, that meant ascending above this, you know, matrix chessboard reality, like I just described, like this dog eat dog world, only to find that, you know, we're all reflections of ourselves. And like when we're sitting here pointing the finger at someone else, we got three pointing back at ourselves. And like if we can get past all that and start to face our own shadows, we can rise above this divide and conquer system being played upon us, which metaphorically I look at it as like a chess game. And it's like, yeah, you can sit there and be the pawn and get trampled upon and just be like a drone in the system like everyone else and be a yes man and just, you know, get your 4-year degree and start your career, get your cookie cutter house, settle down, get married, like the traditional path. Or you can, like, you know, take life into your own hands and like create your own destiny, if you will, and rise above that game and see that you have something to learn from literally every human you encounter in this life. And, you know, even when you think you're not learning, you are. And that's just your own ignorance from keeping you from that right fruit that's being fed to you in the form of teaching. Like we're all constantly like switching back between teacher and student. I've come to learn through my own life experiences. And I think it's a humble way to like go about life. And Ascension of the Chessmen was a rhyme that always stuck with me. And it was a unique name that I felt would set myself apart. And I also like that it started with the letter A because it puts you at the top of a list. But I mean, it was just a name that always stuck with me. And I'm happy I stuck with it because I think it's unique, and there's no other name out there like it. And I don't think anyone will copy it. And some people like get confused by it, but it gives me more meaning to explain it with more depth every time. And there's so many metaphors for chess within the truth community, and I just wanted to play off that. And then in every Masonic temple, you got the checkered board floor. And I also always tell the story of a pastor early on in my journey that was a big mentor of mine early on in my awakening. First guy that I could really talk about the Illuminati with, and, you know, these taboo subjects. And he had told me the story of how he became a pastor. He was on this LSD trip and in a very rough spot in his life at the time. And there was like all this commotion. He was living in a trap house in a really rough neighborhood. And he was just sitting by himself in the kitchen, and this chessboard flew off the table and it landed perfectly on the floor. And there was one piece still standing on the board, and it was a white king. So he saw that as a sign to, you know, take a higher purpose in life and become a pastor, which that story always stuck with me, like as crazy as that sounds. Like, and ironically, many years later, after being you know, a loyal churchgoer in that church and helping out a lot, I would go on to have my own LSD experience, which totally broke me wide open as far as what it was like to encounter what we would call God, or all that is, and realizing I am the all is me. Like just those big breakthrough realizations came to the forefront for me through my own unique experience of my own. And I always tied it back to that initial story he told me because I was always like relying on the experiences and stories of others up to that point until I had my own direct experience. And I think as long as you're relying on other stories rather than your own, you're going to continually fall short of like what you're looking for. And that's kind of been my life journey thus far.
That's really interesting because one thing I would say is, from what you said a lot there, but there was so much of it I can relate to just from the journey of starting this podcast with Aaron. Even going to the letter of the our podcast name starting with A as well, because that's something we both identified.
Yeah, exactly.
um,
It's the algorithm.
with you going to Catholic school, and I take it you was brought up in a Catholic family if you went to a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Um, then you sort of mentioned that you detached yourself from church and sort of organized religion, I think it's called. How difficult of a transition is that? Because I know school's obviously where you learn all your fundamental like foundations of life, but at the same time, school's ultra restrictive, and even the way I can look at a Catholic school is it's even more restrictive because then you've got the rules of religion behind it as well. How difficult of a detachment was that to make?
Man, it was really tough. Because I was baptized and grew up Lutheran originally. As a baby I was baptized Lutheran. My mom actually grew up Catholic and my dad grew up Lutheran. So I had a lot of differences within my household. Me and my brother were complete opposites. My parents were complete opposites in a lot of ways. Like I said, my mom was Catholic and my dad was Lutheran growing up. And then my mom was also Republican and my dad was a Democrat. And my dad was a local politician. He was a county clerk for a number of years, 40 years, and also election commissioner. So I was around politics from a very young age. Like my dad wasn't challenged in politics for most of his career. So we didn't have to do, the political parades all the time, but I did have to do a few of those and just to like see like what a circus it all is directly, even on the local level. Like my dad wasn't anything very high up, but like he was tied in with, people that were at those levels. So, just having some unique experiences in that regard. I'll never forget as a kid, my dad got invited to see George W. Bush speak here locally in Omaha at the Air Force Base. And my dad was the only Democrat in the whole Republican county and state. And my dad's in a wheelchair. He broke his neck at 15. I don't know if you guys know that about me, but yeah, my dad's always been paralyzed ever since I was a kid. So I've never known my dad with functional legs. So that was a challenge in and of itself as a kid, just to like, feel normal compared to the other kids. But so he got invited to this George W. Bush speech, and being a Democrat, Bush was a Republican. So he's a handicapped guy. So the people running the show like take us all the way to the front to see the speech commence. And shortly after, like 5 minutes after we get wheeled to the front, they're like, "Oh, he's a Democrat," and they wheeled us all the way to the back once they found that out. And I was like, "What?" And I was like 8 at the time. And I was like, "This doesn't make any sense to me." I was like, "You're doing us dirty like that just because of his team he's on or whatever." And that was a funny experience early on where I was like, okay, something isn't right here with this whole political thing. And so going back to religion, sorry to get off there, but I just thought I'd throw that in. So my parents were very different, seeing different, not only political affiliations, but religions they were brought up in. And for those who aren't familiar with either or, I would say Lutheran is like a Catholic light. They're very similar. They have very minor differences, but obviously Martin Luther had his disagreements with the church and rebelled and started his own church and yada yada. But So I was baptized Lutheran, grew up in a Lutheran school until about second grade. I was having trouble reading and had a speech impediment back then. And we had a girl in our class that was Down syndrome that was constantly disrupting class. And I just couldn't get the attention I needed individually to like get caught up with the other kids. And I was getting behind. So my parents decided to send me to public school temporarily. At least I didn't think it was temporarily at the time. Like once they had found I was doing really well there and made some good friends and was thriving. My brother got into some juvenile trouble. When I was in about fifth grade, he was in junior high, and him and his friends decided to break into a fireworks stand and got caught. And so, he got a slap on the wrist, but my parents took it upon themselves to like discipline him by sending him to a Catholic school to, essentially get him back on the right path, I guess, which it did work. He's doing very well and very successful, chemical engineer, very smart guy. We have our differences, but so that's how we initially swung back over to Catholicism. And my mom had a lot of struggles within her own family. She was the oldest of 9 kids. I grew up in an environment where part of the time we were cool with my mom's side of the family, part of the time we weren't. And there's like this very dysfunctional environment within the home and with outside family members. Very different sides of the family. My dad's side was more Democratic. My mom's side was more small town, rural, Republican farmers. And, I just had very different sides on each side. So that kind of gave me just new perspectives on things. And so I had went to this Catholic school. It was very different than what I was used to. I remember like being mad at my mom for weeks, like wouldn't even talk to her on the way home because I was just so upset, like having to wear uniforms every day. And I remember my first day of school, man, like I got a football thrown at my face, like had a bloody nose. Like it was just, a complete embarrassment that first day. And like just getting accustomed to, okay, well, I guess I'm stuck here now. And I either got to get used to it and like evolve and, just make friends and like make the most of it, or, I'm going to, have a hellish time here. So I did the best I could. And, I have good friends from there still, and had some good experiences within it. I never really got into being an altar boy, thankfully. So like I never got molested in that way. But I don't doubt that I was friends with kids that maybe had those experiences. I had some unique experiences just being forced to take a religion class every year. You either had a priest or a nun that was teaching that class, and just picking their brain on, different questions that, naturally come up as a kid, not just going along with everyone else, and starting to realize that once you start to ask those questions, they either didn't have answers or would get up in arms about it. And, like I wasn't trying to cause harm. Like I was honestly just curious, like why we believe certain things or why we can't do these certain things, like just, common questions. And, something that really struck me early on was my sophomore year, I had a priest that was a licensed exorcist teaching my religion class. And I always found it odd that he showed us the Exorcism of Emily Rose Hollywood production movie in class, but like he wouldn't answer any questions about his own experiences with exorcisms. And like I get they like take an oath of secrecy and all that, and they can't speak about it and teach their own on that. But it's like that is a little fishy to me that you would, blatantly show us something fake like a Hollywood production to like, draw in more fear from us surrounding the topic. rather than just like having an open conversation about your own experiences and like, just brushing over anything regarding questions surrounding it. So that was weird to me. And then like, having to go to Stations of the Cross and confession and all this stuff. To me, it didn't make sense to have a guy that's never been married or a guy that could or could not be a pedophile once you get into that stuff to not only like, tell your deepest, darkest secrets to, and like console you on that, like as a therapist, if you will, to like help you through those experiences when he probably doesn't have any direct experiences of his own to relate to that. And maybe even worse, like he's like fantasizing in his own mind with those secrets that you're revealing to him. And then like to find out that like this guy, a priest is also the one that's given marriage counseling to converts that are converting to Catholicism and like helping them to have a healthy marriage. And I'm like, wait a minute, a guy that has never been married, has never had kids, is like advising you on what a healthy relationship would look like. Like something's not adding up here. And like my parents had to go through all that. And like, unfortunately, they got divorced many years later. So like it didn't add to success, and, things go where they will in that regard. But, I just was starting to get to roadblocks of like, okay, I just don't buy into this anymore. And like everyone around me did. And like, I was going along with it because I had no other choice, but I just knew like the water was running dry for me. And like, I didn't feel like this was my belief system, or like this is what was filling my cup as far as spirituality or trying to connect with God. Like I always felt like it was just not doing it justice. And like I would see my dad like falling asleep during homilies on Sundays in church. Like Catholic church is very dry. Like I'm like, if something's lighting you up inside spiritually, like my dad wouldn't be falling asleep during the most important part of the service, So that's kind of where I lost my way as far as like Catholicism, but that's what I was raised in. So, once I graduated high school and, moved to go to college and stuff, I was kind of lost spiritually. I was like, where do I turn from here? And, starting to learn about the dark side of Catholicism and all the pedophiles and the priests just getting shifted to a different parish when they were caught. That was like very, how should I say, like very shocking to me, or like not so shocking in the sense of like, I always felt there was something odd about the whole thing, but to like find out about that, I was like, okay, I definitely want nothing to do with that church. But at the same time, once you're raised in that, like raised with the religious dogma in that way, like nothing against anyone that's religious, but like you think that that's the only framework you have to connect to something greater than yourself. So for me at the time, I was like, okay, Catholicism's not it. So what else is out there within Christianity? Because I thought, Christianity is the only truth out there. What's the verse in the Bible? Like, I am the way, the truth, and the life, or whatever Jesus is quoted as saying. And a lot of people, I think, take that out of context or like grip onto that so close to their heart that they can't see anything outside of that, or they can't take in wisdom from other avenues. And that was me at the time, man. Like I started to get into 9/11 and the lies about cannabis and just other conspiracies, getting into the end time stuff and the Mayan calendar ending and the prophecies of 2012. And there's all these movies coming out about the end of the world and the apocalypse is here. And there was a lot of fear in me surrounding that because I was externalizing everything. I had never taken the time to go within, and like I was looking at everything outside of myself as like there's where the answers are. Like I don't have them. I need to search externally to find them. And so at that time, I had sought out a few different churches. I went to like this big Berean church. It was like a evangelical Christian church, and it was like a giant concert, and that was cool. Like it felt like going to a live concert with Christian music. And I was like, I don't know, I just didn't like connect like one to one. It just felt like too big to like feel like individualized. And I went to this real small Pentecostal church for the first time, and that's where I met that pastor I had mentioned earlier. And we really connected. Like he was telling me he had like DVDs on Jay-Z being Illuminati, and like we just really connected on like taboo conspiracy shit. And we related a lot. Like he consumed a lot of cannabis early on in his life, like I was at that time, and still do from time to time. But he just really was the mentor I needed at that time in my life. And a few years later, after really being a prominent member of the church, I mean, we had really small services. Like on a good day, we would have like 30 people. Like it was a really small, like intimate setting of a church. And it was much more uplifting and lively, like people screaming out the songs, and people speaking in tongues, and just seeing stuff I had never seen before. And it just felt like right to me at the time. But like the longer I was a part of it, and I was also like, bear with me, but I was also in my like party stage of, figuring things out in life, and, going into college and partying every weekend, and like, really in that, and like trying to balance out like going to church every Sunday still, and like going to church hungover. Like I was that type of committed. I was helping out running the slideshow in the back, but the night before I was like having a bunch of drinks at my house with friends, like, partying, and something wasn't matching up. It's like I was expecting the church to change me rather than me taking the first step to change myself. So I was experiencing a lot of shame in the homilies when they were talking about be sober minded, and, all the sinning, and like we're a born sinner, like we're born dirty or something, and we need to get clean, right? We need to be baptized. And I never did end up getting baptized. My mom did get rebaptized. I mean, obviously I was baptized as a baby as a Lutheran, but I never did end up getting baptized. But I would go on to have my own LSD experience, which I had a LSD experience prior in my senior year of high school, the day before my senior pictures. And it was a crazy experience, like very recreational, didn't have like any big spiritual ahas from it. But it was an experience, and it like got my feet wet, and like at least let me know what territory I was getting into with that drug. I don't even like to call it a drug. I think it's a catalyst to newfound ideas and places of consciousness or states of consciousness. But I had that experience early on, kind of scared me away from it. Really what got me to try it initially was the Beatles had the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I'm like, that song was obviously about LSD. It's the quote unquote greatest band of all time. A lot of people tab them as. And then there was this Pittsburgh Pirates pitcher, Doc Ellis, who threw a no-hitter in Major League Baseball on LSD, which he tells the story about. And I was like, how in the hell did this guy throw a no-hitter on LSD? Like, I got to try this at least once in my life. So my friends had like talked me into it, and we all did it together and like had a fun time. I just remember laughing a lot, but I didn't do it for a very long time after that, like years, couple of years, 2-3 years. Tried mushrooms the first time within a year after that. And we thought we were done experiencing the experience, and decided to drive back to where we were staying. And that was like a 20-30 minute drive. And then the mushrooms kicked in on our way back. So it was a rough trip home. It took probably an hour and a half to get back, and switch driving 2 or 3 times throughout that experience. Like, had a lot of visuals going on. that scared me away for a while, because I was like, I had no one I could relate to. I had no one I could talk to about these things. Like, I just had no roadmap to like embark on these journeys. So like, I honestly like tried them and put them down for a good 2 years. And then I had another opportunity after I'd been going to this church for a while, partying. And that's the one that really broke me open and gave me a whole new perspective on life. And I just had this sense of like everything I knew to be true was a lie, like literally everything. And like it was the humble lesson of like, you don't know anything, and like that's okay. Like it's a beautiful thing actually, because now you can learn from a whole new perspective on literally everything, and to like reset you in a sense of like, okay, now you can take in new information without like a bias and like ingesting that information. So that allowed me to like propel myself forward, and also like had the intuition to like decide to take a step back from the church and decide that, all right, I had to part ways and this wasn't the path that I was meant to set out upon, but I had gained what I needed from it at that time. My parents, I had also influenced my parents to go to that church as well. So that was a hard period to like let them know like this church I had like got them to start coming to regularly and be a big part of, like I was deciding to withdraw from it at this point. And that was a hard conversation I had to have, but they understood and they respected that, you know, they supported me, and like that's what I had chose. And you know, I was getting into meditation at this time, really still trying to integrate that whole breakthrough experience, which I was still figuring out how to do. Like I said, I didn't have any people to talk to. Luckily, I had a friend that was getting me into meditation at the time, but I was you know, just trying to figure things out. Started to get into astrology and different healing modalities at that time, and just the more spiritual side of things, because I had so much fear from getting into conspiracies that I just didn't have a balance or like a, a positive input to like ground me in the sense of like thinking the world's not going to end, or like prophecies are playing out, or like the fallen angels are here and all this like far out shit. But like spirituality really started to take hold for me at that time. Started to get into a new relationship and had a lot of major wake up calls as far as having to raise a stepson throughout that portion of my life. And you know, had to grow up very quickly. I was very young, and gotten into a relationship where she had already had a son, and I was stepping into a new role in that regard. So that helped me grow up in a lot of ways, and just started to get more into astrology and these sorts of subjects, and then getting into crystals and stuff like that. But to get past that period, that relationship ended up not working out. But we had decided to do a ayahuasca ceremony as we parted ways, and that broke me open in a whole new capacity, spiritually speaking, and just getting to really know myself on a deep level, and getting to understand like how much I was numbing out in a lot of ways with cannabis. And you know, I love cannabis to death. Like I think it's a beautiful plant medicine. It's a great tool to help us question things and tap into our creativity and all sorts of great things. But it also can become a crutch, just like alcohol or anything else, and numb us out to our emotions and what it means to be human. And that was the first time I was able to feel again. And for, you know, probably 10, 15, 20 years of my life, just, you know, shutting off from traumatic experiences as a child, you know, that got me in this fight or flight survivalist mindset of like, not wanting to feel my emotions. And like when tough emotions would come up, not wanting to face them, or feeling like as a man, like I can't fucking cry, like that's what pussies do, or like, just like getting over these barriers I had within myself. And that tapped into this newfound confidence I had towards starting a podcast and taking that more seriously, but also trying stand-up comedy the first time. And really, like, what set ayahuasca apart from my other psychedelic experiences, having done LSD and mushrooms and trying DMT, up until that point, having various compelling, insightful experiences up to that point. But ayahuasca, man, totally shifted my perspective of like what these were, and like how they were supposed to be used, and like the respect I was giving to them. Because it's one thing to just like last minute decide, yeah, I'm gonna trip out and like have a good time, or like go to a music festival or something like this, just use them recreationally, like go to the bar. Like um there's a set and setting where these medicines, I would call them, are meant to be taken in and to get the most out of, and to really get the therapeutic benefits that they're meant to have to give to you. If you're willing to, take the leap of faith and have the courage to take that deep dive with you and yourself. Because I think, myself included, a lot of us were afraid to face what we don't like about ourselves, our inner insecurities, to like really look at those shadow aspects that maybe we don't want to look at, or like we're afraid to acknowledge. Like we just want to say that's evil, that's bad, that's like Satan. We want to externalize it and blame someone else for what's a part of us, rather than like love and give attention to that part of ourselves and understand why it exists and how we can use it to our benefit rather than our downfall. And those were huge, huge inspirations for me, or insights that came through of, man, like I've been running from a lot in my life. And it really changed my perspective on like what it meant to embark on like a plant medicine journey or ceremony. And every journey since then, which there hasn't been many, it's really turned my life into the psychedelic experience itself, and realizing that life itself is the trip. And like, you're integrating a heavy experience like that for years and years, your whole life after the experience, like understanding, oh, that small part of the experience, like, oh, that's what it was trying to show me, like way back then, but I didn't understand it then. But once you're in that experience in life where that experience comes up, you're like, oh, now I understand, I have the tools to deal with this in the right way, and stuff like that. So that's just kind of been my journey. And I guess I'll leave it there for now. But just to like paint the picture of where I've journeyed, from religion to spirituality, and like tying the two together and starting to see the connections within religion, to the more esoteric components to them, and starting to draw connections between them all. And like they're all rivers to the same ocean, like they all have things to teach us about ourselves. Like it's all the hero's journey, if you will. And if we can put ourselves in the shoes of the characters in each of these texts, I think we can get the deeper message it's trying to relay to us, of like, we play all these characters throughout our lives, and like we can relate to all these stories because those stories are going on in our own lives in different ways. But that's where I found like the alchemical gold, if you will, is like starting to apply the Bible to like my life, or the Bhagavad Gita, or like all these different texts. Yeah, it's been eye-opening, and getting introduced to Sweat Lodge here locally, and getting into Native American traditions has been a huge integration tool since getting back home, along with breath work and meditation and these sorts of things.
What sort of stuff do you do around Native Americans to help you on your sort of path?
Yeah. So, about 5 years ago, I was at a buddy's concert of mine, and a friend of his, we started talking, and I had said I just got back from an ayahuasca ceremony, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've always wanted to journey with ayahuasca." And he's like, "I do sweat lodge here locally, and I've tried peyote, and I've done a peyote ceremony." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I've always wanted to try a sweat lodge. And so he introduced me to a sweat lodge here locally. There's many sweat lodges all over the place. I think you just got to meet the right people and make the right connections, but they're usually very welcoming to people of all colors and creeds. If you look at the Native American medicine wheel, you have the black, red, white, and yellow colors, which represent the four root races, the four directions. Like, everyone's included in that. It's not like you have to, be wearing a suit and say Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior to walk in the door. Like, no, like, it doesn't matter what creed you decide to believe in. Like, you're there to purify and detox and purge. You're crawling in there. So it's basically made of willow branches, because they bend easily, and it creates like this mound-like structure. And they in the olden days, they would put buffalo skins or animal skins on top, and then seal it shut. And you sing 4 songs through every door, 4 native songs, and the elder that's leading it is pouring water on the rocks, but it's all very symbolic and broken down esoterically in a way that I had never received in like a Sunday service, relating to my Christian experiences. But I always find so much wisdom to gain in these ceremonies. But I've grown more and more inclined to take on larger roles as the years have went by. I started out just, coming to a few ceremonies here and there, and then it started to turn into every Saturday I was going, and then it started every Saturday I was, helping with the fire, and then getting asked to join the board, and having fire duties once a month or so, to prepare the fire, and learning what all goes into that, and what the directions mean, and just, kind of going under the wing of my elder to like learn what they have learned. And, what is quite a miracle, if you will, to even be here, the fact that they still have passed it on, because everything got passed down from mouth to mouth. Like, they didn't write things down. So like, the fact that they still have this living tradition to take part in is like quite an honor for me, man, and a privilege. And I don't take that lightly. But like, just learning all the symbology behind it, like, I've seen a lot of parallels, not only within Christianity and my upbringing, but like my psychedelic experiences, my ayahuasca experiences, and just like the path of life, and this death and rebirth archetype that gets played out in all these stories of, it's like the metaphor of life is like a spiral, and you continually come back to the same lessons you thought you knew or had learned, and see them from a different perspective. So like the symbolism of like crawling in the inipi, the sweat lodge, you crawl into the left, men and women sit separately, and you go around in a circle. Like, you crawl in and sit down, and then when you crawl out, you go out the other side. So it's like you're going in a circle, but it's also symbolic of the circle of life, and we're all connected, and like there's no one left behind. So like, we're all part of this together type of thing. And like, you're feeling the elements together. Like, it gets very hot in there. If you've ever been in a sauna, it's like that, plus like 20 to 40 degrees. It gets freaking hot, and it's pitch black. So you're humbled in the sense of not only are you not getting in there in the suit like you would go to church in and like seeing who's dressed the best today, like you're in there in shorts. Like the women are dressed in skirts and shirts, but like as a man, you're very humble to get in there and just swim trunks, you know, and you like not even jewelry or anything. Like you leave all that behind and you crawl in to be reborn. So you're going back to your youth, and each so there's four parts of the lodge. So the first part is like your infancy stage, the second part being like your teenage years, the third part being your adult years, and then the fourth year being your elderly years. So it's like the four stages of your life. And like that's the ceremony itself, is like taking you through a whole life experience to be reborn on the other side anew, like to like filter out everything that's been bogging you down, all this baggage you've acclimated throughout your life that you're still holding on to. It helps you to let go of those things and send up prayers to the creator to help you to work through those things, and seeing healings take place in those ceremonies, and you know, just to be in the dark and feel the heartbeat of the earth, symbolically brought through the drumming and the songs being sung, and the rocks being brought in to impregnate Mother Earth that are put in the circle. So you have Mother Earth is like the lodge itself, like the earth it sits on, and in the center there's a big circle, which these rocks or tumkas, which are known as the grandfathers, that's the masculine energy being brought in to impregnate the female divine feminine energy. So it's like a balancing of the two, and there's just so much you know, heartfelt firsthand experience in that of you're feeling the heat, you're feeling the songs being sung, you're feeling the deep wisdom being shared of ancestral traditions being passed down from generation to generation, of knowledge that's been lost, man, and like the parallels between other religions like being openly spoken about, and like you know, a spot being held for people to get sober and, you know, get their lives together to be better for themselves and their families. And it's just been quite an honor to be a part of it. And I'm still learning a lot. I just made my first drum recently and I'm learning the songs, but yeah, it's been an honor and a privilege. I wish I could share more. I would point anyone to my show I did with my elder Charles Bordeaux, who pours water at my sweat lodge to gain a deeper understanding of what all goes into that and what led him to it. Ironically, he was raised Catholic, and both his parents are Native and are still Catholic, which I think goes to show like what's been done to that community of like, you know, he had to go back to his roots after being brought up as a Catholic, to like you know, have to find that on your own versus you're like born into it, like that's all you know. Like it's quite a paradox to me of like that's where we're at in society. But he's been a great teacher and a great mentor of mine through this period of my life.
I find it very interesting that how you've experienced spirituality in different forms or different ways. Like you've experienced it through Christianity, through your psychedelic trips, through your experience with Native Americans, and did you mention the Bhagavad Gita as well?
Yeah, so my roommate actually is a Hare Krishna. He moved out a couple months ago to go to an ashram down in Dallas, Texas. So we had many open-minded discussions behind the mic the last few years, just about you know, thoughts on Eastern ways of looking at things. Ram Dass was a big teacher of his, and he was definitely keeping me spiritually grounded, being more conspiracy minded and getting into those sorts of subjects. But yeah, Bhagavad Gita as well, man. I think, you know, there's wisdom to be gained from all those ancient texts.
Well, I was going to ask, with everything you've learned and everything you've experienced so far, how do you define God or the Creator at this moment in time?
Yeah, I think God is Okay. I think that question is like a paradox in and of itself, because you can't describe the undescribable. If you ask me what is God, I would say pause, and that's God. Like, that's how still and mystical and beyond our comprehension it is. Like, it's the stillness beyond words. You know, it's it's the all that is. It's in everything, and it's everything that it is not. Like, it's the unthinkable. It's the untouchable, but at the same time, it's a connection that you have personally within yourself to all that is and all that you are. It's like that eternal flame that burns within you, within your soul. It's you know, the original source of that, from my perspective. Like, it's you know, the original you know, author or creator, spark that created all of this. It's that infinite intelligence that is beyond all comprehension, is like how I would describe what God is. But I think the simplest way to say it, man, is like, you pause, and that's God. And for some people, maybe that's a little too hard to comprehend, or like they think I'm being woo woo, or they're like, that's like a shortcut to the answer. But like, that's like the easiest way for me to say it, man.
Yeah, because it is describing the undescribable. I think you've done it in a perfect way, to be honest. When you're talking about the sweat lodges, what I thought was good, what I thought, the whole sort of ceremony sounds super refreshing, because of how you mentioned when you go to church, everyone's got whoever's got the best suit on. You see that sort of sense of materialism in embedded in religion. We see it here in the UK. Well, I see it a lot with the Muslim community. It's all about who can build the biggest mosque. And as I was growing up and I started hearing about it's all a competition to own the biggest mosque, it sort of put in my head like that's just feels like the complete opposite of what God should be about or what belief should be about.
Whereas sorry, Cam. Whereas I think in Islam, it's traditional. I know it's turned into that in the UK, but in Islam, traditionally they're not supposed to be competing like that. That's why they go to mosque in to set everyone goes in the same clothes.
Yeah, and I don't think I think people have a hard time separating the message from the messenger, if that makes sense, to use a metaphor of like, we've seen our external world turn into like these giant churches of all different religions. But like, what has that really done? Has it brought people closer together or farther apart? You know, have we focused on the wrong things throughout that method? Like, not to say like you can't find community in wherever you find community, whether that's a sports team, whether that's a church, whether that's like a club of whatever nature, like a secret society. Like, we all have our different, you know, clubs we're a part of, or like communities. But like, I think people get lost in like, okay, well, we're going to exclude those people in our club. And like, we've become so exclusive of not including everyone in on what we're doing. It's like we're afraid to break barriers of like who's allowed in and who isn't. It's like you got to look a certain way to join a group nowadays, versus like if you go back to the Prophet Muhammad or Jesus or any of these ascended masters, if you will, like if you get to the root of their message, I don't think any of them like would have planned for this, you know. Like they said to beware of false prophets and beware of people who say they're things they're not, or wolves in sheep's clothing. You know, I think ultimately it's your walk. It's your walk with the creator. It's your work. It's your walk with the divine, and it's your work to do that. Like, that's your journey. That yes, there can be like a middleman to help you get there, but ultimately, if the middleman is not helping you back to yourself and helping you to work on yourself, then is he really doing a job, or just like kind of being a gatekeeper to allow you into the party. You know what I mean? Like he's like the bouncer outside the door, like, sorry, VIPs only. Like, no, like I'm already a VIP. I don't need VIP access. We're all already VIPs in my mind. Like, and I think we get caught up in like thinking we have to be a certain way to be a part of something when we just have to be ourselves, man. You know, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's the beauty of what you were saying with your Native American side. Another question I have is around Aaron laid off, and yourself obviously laid off the different types of spiritual journeys and awaken, or like sub awakenings in a sense that you've had. But you've talked a lot about conspiracy. Now, me and Aaron, and the reason why we kind of started the podcast is we are curious of the world, and we sort of love conspiracies. But what I kind of added, we've asked a lot of guests before, like, how would you try and influence other people to go on a spiritual journey? And I've been reflecting on that question a lot recently because I've been like, well, why am I on a spiritual journey? And my spiritual journey actually came from me looking into conspiracies because it all sort of leads back to ancient times, ancient philosophies, and without even knowing it, you end up in this sort of spiral of spirituality. And I guess it's kind of up to the user if they want to dig deeper in or if they want to just if they get a bit afraid and they don't want to go down. But we've sort of me and Aaron have sort of gone 2 foot straight in. Um, how can you explain your spiritual journey on the conspiracy side? Can you see a connection there with your spirituality?
Oh yeah, man. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't, have that initial awakening to like the world is fucked, like everything's corrupt, like all politicians are corrupt, like banks aren't what they say they are, like the Federal Reserve does not create money. The Titanic sinking, there's a lot more to that story, like all these false flags throughout history. You start to get into his story, like the victors write history how they want it to be written. And I think you can't leave ancient texts out of that either. And I think it was getting past the surface level of things, like getting into astrotheology and like looking at the Bible or any of these texts like biologically, like it's speaking as like the body is a temple, and like you get into the deeper aspects of that, like, oh, it's like telling you like your body is the church. Like the church isn't this building with 4 walls, like you are the church, and you need to like clean up that church and like get that church right to where like other people could come to you and like find the radiant light that's alive in them and you, because you're radiating that in your daily life, just in how you carry yourself and how you are as a person. And that flame has never gone out. Like that flame is alive in you. That's the divine spark that's alive in all of us. But I feel like we're so accustomed to like building a callousness over that throughout our life experiences, throughout all the division in our world, of all these isms of who we think we are and all these titles we put upon ourselves to like not even do justice of who we truly are. Like we're all God's children in my mind. Like we all were here for a purpose. Like and I think when you get into conspiracies and you start to see like everything I was taught growing up is a lie, and like the world isn't what I thought it was, you start to get into this black pilled mentality, like, well, what's the point of living anymore then? Like it's very depressing, honestly. And it's a lot to take in. And then especially like early on back in 2012, man, like we've come a long ways as far as like it not being so taboo anymore. I think the last 2 years like provided a lot of that to come through, of like now you can like openly talk about conspiracies where people don't think you're like a crackpot, like homeless person or something like that, doesn't have a roof over his head or like doesn't have any responsibilities. Like it's quite a paradox because like you said, man, and Sam Tripoli always says like if you take it at the right way, conspiracies always lead you back to spirituality and ultimately yourself, because I think that's what spirituality is like going within and like just sitting with yourself, starting to examine yourself, starting to get to know yourself on a deeper level, starting to see your connection to the all that is, like to creator, to the divinity that's all around us. And you start to pick up on synchronicities and like miracles and like chance interactions that you never would have expected to happen, or like right off as coincidence. Like you start to see the magic all around you. Like once you start to plug in to, you know, more positive mindsets, I guess, or like just like that. Okay, although they've set this world up how they have, and you know, there's very rich elite, if you will, families that run this world. What can I do to combat that? Do I combat that by just calling it out and saying these people are evil, they're doing blood sacrifices and all this like crazy evil shit? Or do I get myself right first, and start to make positive changes on myself and what I can control in my life, and start to build my life the way I want it, start to be self-sustainable in the ways that I can, start to grow my own food, start to do meditations on a daily basis, start to tap into breath work and natural ways of getting to, you know, what you can accomplish through ayahuasca or DMT, just through naturally bringing that out within you through a natural sober practice like breath work or meditation. You know, these are practices that go back eons, man. And I think that those are the deeper conspiracies of like, they've been doing this for centuries, man. And I feel like, you know, once you get into the occult and like can get past like the religious dogma of like all that stuff's evil and like it's all witchcraft and like there's nothing to gain from any of that, like ultimately I think the people that run the world, I think they've tapped into knowledge that they've kept us from accessing, and whether or not they're using that knowledge for good or bad, that's up to us to decide individually, I think, or what we can take from what we can see on the world stage. But at the end of the day, that's still knowledge that we can choose to seek out on our own or not. And, you know, that's how we stay ignorant, is refusing to look into anything that's like turn them into what they are. Like, how did they become so powerful? Like maybe they had access to things that they kept other, you know, lesser than people like they would frame them as from accessing, so they could retain the power that they still hold today. And I think all of us have access to that power if we choose to access it. But first, we have to look at ourselves, and we have to start to seek out knowledge that we've been kept from accessing. But ultimately, I think psychedelics can really kickstart that journey for each of us individually. Not to say they're you know, meant for everyone, and that's why I think there's these alternative practices like breath work, meditation, yoga, chanting, that are out there to provide that for people that may not be made to use psychedelics. But then you look into indigenous cultures and, you know, our mental health crisis here in the West, and like how we frame people as like crazy, and we just throw them into a locked room in a straitjacket and like numb them out on pharmaceutical drugs, which I believe that that in itself is witchcraft and sorcery, like doing that to a person and like taking the spiritual component out of like what this person is suffering from, whether they do need an exorcism or like something spiritual to be done, like a plant medicine ceremony, or like they need to be guided through a healing ceremony of some sort, and a medicine man that can deal with this in the right way, or like has the experience to deal with these things that in our Western medical system we just don't give any attention to, or we think is like pseudoscience, which in reality I think regular science, what we call science, has been inverted, and science is actually pseudoscience, and pseudoscience is actually the real, authentic, original science that's been lost. And it's been set up that way on purpose to keep us from accessing who we truly are, like what is our purpose here and what is our deeper mission. Because if we don't know who we truly are, how can we know what we're doing here, or how we can like make the world a better place? Like we're just going to go through the motions and like keep spinning out and like keep going in circles and like keep waiting for a savior to come, or waiting for them to come save us, waiting for a handout for us to like do anything. And that's never going to work. I think we have to be proactive. We have to be you know ready to get out of our comfort zones. And for a lot of us, that is hard, man. Like I think that's where they've got us, is like they've got us in these like comfort prisons, if you will. Like, yeah, we have a house, we have money to cover our basic needs, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs are met. But like, what if you have those met and you still feel like you're purposeless, and like there's no purpose beyond what you're doing, and you're still focusing on like what they're saying in the news, or whatever distraction they've chosen to roll out to like keep us fighting with each other. And like, as long as we continue to plug into that rather than be discerning and like take from it what we need and show how it's being used against us, I think we're going to continue to be held short of like what we're really here to do, and like the place we can create here, because we outnumber them like 99-1. It's not even close. Like it's like 99 to 0.01, and I think we need to keep that in mind, of like just how impactful we really are. Like the fact that you guys took the leap of faith and belief in yourselves to start your show, man, I think says a lot about who you guys are and what your mission is here. And, you've chosen not to be mediocre, and you've chosen to, get out of your comfort zone to do this, because it's not easy, man. It's not easy to like get behind a mic and like, get over the anxiety of like, what are people going to think? Because, we live in a world where everyone is so sensitive. Everyone is triggered by like the least uncomfortable statements, like stand-up comedy is like a miracle to still exist. The fact that they can still say certain things, because I think it was either Tripoli that said it or some comedian. It's like they're the last art form that's keeping us from being completely enslaved. Because as long as comedy's around, we can freely laugh and joke about the polarities in our society without getting up in arms or wanting someone's head on a chopping block or wanting them removed from society completely. And as long as that's alive and well in all art forms, like I think we're heading in the right direction. And we can't get caught up in everything's fucked. Like, everyone got vaccinated. The new world order's here and here to stay. Like, we have no hope to change the plans they've set out for us. That's exactly where they want us to be, man. Like, that's exactly the mindset they want us in. Like, we have no hope. We can't do anything. We have no power. We're powerless. Like, no, as long as we're in that mindset, we are going to be powerless and we are not going to make any change. But I think if we can switch that off and like not stay stuck in like this conspiracy rabbit hole forever, like I think we have to get out of it at a certain point and like take what we've learned and apply it to our lives, like of how we can be more inspirational, more impactful to others and be of service to others. But first we have to fill our own cup. We have to get healthy. We have to get mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, start to eat better, start to exercise, start to grow our own food, start to, just be the change you wish to see in the world, as Gandhi said, and watch how that starts to cause ripple effects in your life. Like once you start to get past these triggering aspects of yourself when you're around others, and you see others like react to that and respond to that, of like, wow, like you used to react like super quick-witted and like angry when I'd like bring these topics up. And now you're like calm and like collected, and like I can actually talk to you about it. Like, what did you do to change? And they start to become curious, and then you start to become an example for others to follow suit. And it's just magic, man. Like once you start to really be the sculptor of who you are and who you can become, watch the magic start to play out in your life, and everyone around you start to follow suit, man. Like it's like Carl Jung would say, man, what you resist persists. And as long as we're in resistance to why we're here and what we're here to do, we're going to continue to be a victim of the world, built around us.
Yeah, what you say about stand-up comedians being sort of the last art form here that's actually able to do something. I like the fact that, and I've identified that all of these big stand-up comics have created podcasts, because there's a lot of people that don't have the ability to do stand-up comedy, obviously. But what I've seen, the likes of Joe Rogan, obviously the main one, but everyone else that followed suit and created podcasts as well, it creates like a sub community of what the stand-up comics are doing, but for everyone else, because we've managed to start a podcast, and now the podcast space is growing infinitely. So I think it's becoming more and more of a safe space to talk about certain things that we want to talk about, and it wouldn't be at the stage it's at if not for the stand-up comics and the big stand-up comics. So I think where it was just on stand-up comedy, they're the only ones left that can talk about stuff. They've then built the platform and multiplied the platform by saying, look guys, just jump on a podcast. It doesn't matter how many people you end up talking to, as long as you can inspire even one person, you're making moves, and you're actually doing something to the community. So that's one thing that keeps me driven, that this is being laid out, and we are all part of building this new community, which, give it 10 years time, and if things are getting worse in society, the podcasting scene is going to get better, and it's going to get bigger, and it's going to get more reliable. And sooner or later, I do have a feeling that the community is going to break off from normal sort of society, and things will start looking better. But yeah, it's like you've been saying the whole way through. Find it with yourself first, like you've done with and setting up your podcast, like I've done, like Aaron's done setting up ours. More people that do that and just break away and start something. We're growing a community. You might look at the amount of views you get and the amount of subscribers and think, well, it's not growing that much. But we're a small part of a bigger picture, which in a few years' time will be great.
Yeah, I definitely think the scales are tipping, man. And like you start to see, churches are losing numbers, mainstream media is losing viewers, less people are voting despite what they want to tell us. Like Biden got the most votes ever in a US election. I find that very hard to believe, and I doubt it to be true. And I choose to believe otherwise. And like that's the power we have, man, the power of belief. We can make ourselves sick, but we can also make each other or make ourselves thrive. And that's a daily choice we get up and have to make. I think it starts off with, being humble and being grateful for all that you already have, but all that's coming to you and like all you continue to receive. You know, talking with like Chris Matthew and from Forbidden Knowledge News, seeing him like above like Don Lemon's CNN podcast and like some of these big talking heads on the podcast charts, I think it starts to tell you where things are going. Like people aren't plugging into the system anymore, and like we're going off the reservation. And I think we're all helping each other out. Like this is a big community, man. And I think you guys are finding that out too, is like we're all here to help each other, and like we're all trying to like heal the collective and like shine a light for the collective of like, no, it's not this dark and gloomy future they want us to believe in. Like we're creating our own future, man. Like we're gonna do this together. And like you said, man, when you get down of like not enough people are listening, or like what am I doing this for, like you'll get that one message from a person someday of like, I was in a really tough spot. I was in a really rough place. And, you know, your message really picked me up when I was feeling down. And that's the stuff that keeps you going, man. Um, that's what we're here to do, is like be of service to others. And, you know, we can be selfish and like take all that we've gained from this life and like continue to pour it back into ourselves. But at a certain point, you got to give back and, you know, help the others along that are still stuck in the dark, and bring them over to where we're at in the light, man, because I think that's where the future lies. And like, if we want to see heaven on earth, like we want to see a better world, like that's what we got to keep doing, man. And like not get down on ourselves because like it hasn't happened yet. It's happening, man. Like it doesn't happen overnight. Like we got to be patient. And, you know, I think that's something I learned at a young age, like having a dad in a wheelchair, you know, like I had to develop patience early. And I think we're so quick to like want instant gratification in our society, whether it's through social media or whatever avenue. Like we've just been accustomed to like want what we want to manifest the moment we want it. Like, and if we don't have it, we get down in the dumps about it, and like we make it worse than like the original desire to have that thing we wanted. It's like we're not doing ourselves any service by like thinking like that. So I think if we could just shift our perspective on things and like control what we can control and like put our best foot forward, like we're going to see a better world inevitably.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I see that with society today. It's I see. Well, I've heard a lot of people talking about most podcasters. They expect to go viral in just a couple of months, really, and if they don't go viral, then they just sort of put the mic down, so to speak, and don't come back to it. But you need to distance yourself from that and look at what you're producing with yourself. And we've been doing this for a year and a bit now, and that year and a bit, I've probably developed more than any time in my whole life, just because I've put myself in challenging situations, had challenging conversations with people that have pushed me a certain degree
Yeah, I
further.
think that's the benefit of doing this podcast is we're developing ourselves as well as putting it out there for the people to learn from the content as well. Like if you go to our earlier videos, you can sort of log our whole journey through what we've been on since we started the podcast, which I think's a great thing, a great tool for anybody that's starting out the journey and wants to sort of understand the path we've been on.
Yeah. And like if you guys have kids someday, like that's a legacy they'll always have of you, you know. And like I think it's another way we can live on after we're gone, you know. It's like a way we can achieve immortality, um materially speaking. Like, you know, it's always going to be here, and it's like leaving our mark, leaving our legacy. And, you know, it's humble to see that growth throughout that process of like where you started and where you're heading and like what you're becoming. And, you know, I think, you know, as a podcaster myself, man, I know where you guys are at, and I know it's tough to like find the why every day. And like when you're like busy as hell and you're like, oh, I got to squeeze this podcast in, you're like, God, I just don't know if I can do it today. Like, remember the why, man. Like, remember why you're doing this. And I think that's important, but also of like keeping in perspective too of like nothing is successful overnight. Like ask any business owner, like they're not seeing a profit, like literally a profit, like $1 profit for usually, you know, a year to 5 years into the business. Like it's a long journey to get there. And I think it's the same with a podcast, man. Like you just have to keep chipping away, keep putting your best foot forward, learning as you go, see what works and what doesn't, and learn from others, man. Like there's so many resources out there. We live in the age of information. Like you can do anything nowadays that you set your mind to with all the resources available. And I think it's the greatest time in the world to be alive because we have access to all these things, and like it is what we make them, you know. I think this has been a tough year for me because I feel that wholeheartedly. Changing jobs, starting new relationships, working through a lot of tough times, family stuff, personal stuff going on, just trying to keep my head on straight, trying to not burn myself out, and like remember to take care of myself, because I realized that, when I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not fair to others. And, I'm going to be snappy and crabby, and like, I'm just not going to be my best self. So like, if it takes stepping away from the podcast for a few months to like come back with a fresh new perspective and like my best foot forward, like that's what I got to do. And like, knowing that it's always going to be there too. Like, just because you take a month off doesn't mean you can't pick up where you left off. Like, be gracious with yourself and like be patient.
So when you say you take this is, well, obviously for us and for the audience too. I see a lot of people struggle finding balance because there's a slight issue where people, and I've had it, and I say I'm coming out the back end of it now, but a lot of people have this feeling where if they're not doing something, if they're not doing something, which means they're not working on, I don't know, a side hustle, they're not doing something which equals monetary gain, then they have a sense of guilt inside them where they're like, oh shit, I need to be doing something, I need to be doing something. And then they feel like it's like the procrastination on another level where they feel pure guilt inside them. How would you explain sort of finding that balance and addressing that guilt that people find?
Mm. Yeah, that's been a lifelong journey of mine. Like, if any of you guys have me on Facebook, I think in my bio, for ever since that LSD journey I discussed earlier, like I put in my bio, like, balance is everything, or something about balance. I'm trying, I'm losing my train of thought on that, but that's the story of my life, man, is finding that balance. And it's not easy. And I think we go through polarities of like multiple extremes where we're hardly doing anything for weeks on end, and like we're being almost become lazy. And then there's other times where we're doing like the jobs of 3 people in like a very short amount of time, and like we're having trouble like coming up for air at points, and then we get burnt out, and then we go back to that lazy period again. And I think it's ebb and flows, man. And it's being more gracious with yourself on a daily basis of like, what can I fit in today and what can't I? And figuring out the model that works for you. I think writing things down has like been a major lesson in my life of like, man, the times I could have wrote things down and should have and regretted not doing it. I'm still learning that on a daily basis. That's a big one. I think, setting time out for yourself, whether it's to meditate, take a bath, do a cold plunge, like do a yoga class, do some yoga at home. There's plenty of free yoga on YouTube that's at your disposal. Don't feel ashamed. Like yoga is great for beginners. Like you can start anywhere. There's so many freaking videos on YouTube. Yoga has been a huge practice from time to time. Exercise is great. Just going for a walk out in nature. Just carving in those practices, because don't forget to be as well. Don't forget, despite how much society tells us we always have to be doing and making money, or, we're lazy if, everything we're doing isn't translating into money. Remember to take some time out for yourself as well. As long as your bills are paid, like take care of that first. I understand that. But like, even if you like overexert yourself, because I'm guilty of this too, man. Like I've taken a lot of trips this year, a lot of vacations, probably more than I should have. And, I'm hard on myself with that, because it's like, temporarily I'm going to be financially in straits, and like, going to be getting out of debt, and like going to have to work my butt off to like pay off, some past vacations or past experiences. But those experiences will always stay with you, and those are priceless. And don't forget that part of it too. Like, don't get hung up on the stress of, overworking for some weeks at a time to like make up for time you're enjoying yourself. Like that is the balance of like, you'll go through ebbs and flows, but like pace yourself. Don't go pedal to the metal every day, day in, day out. Like remember to take a day where you just do nothing, where you just do some spiritual practices, really sit with yourself, take some time to read a book you've been putting off for a long time, or listen to a podcast you've wanted to listen to, but you haven't made the time for. Whatever it may be. I think there's so many modalities out there to bring you back to yourself, and like that stillness that's within you, that's always wanting your attention, just to like check in and make sure you're good before you keep, going pedal to the metal and grinding it out, because it's hard to find that on a daily basis with this society we live in, where it's you're not enough if you're not constantly doing. But I'm telling you, it's rewarding to like take that time out to like check in and just get still for a minute.
I think it's a great message that you've given, because it's something I personally struggle with myself. I always, if I'm just sat like watching a film or something, I feel bad, like guilty that I'm not doing anything productive. Whereas you don't need to always be doing something productive. You can just take the time just to not do anything and have that time to yourself.
Yeah, just like keeping that inner voice in check. There's many ways you can look at that, of like the light and the shadows, Carl Jung would put it, or just different archetypes, or like words you can use to describe that inner voice or the awareness beyond the awareness. And just to check in with that every once in a while. And like I think self-talk is super important, and that's something we don't talk about enough in the truth community, because the subjects we cover can be so daunting and like depressing and very heavy. So sometimes we need to like offload that and purge ourselves, purify, go sit in the sauna for a while and just get quiet, just get real quiet, and listen to the thoughts that come up, and don't fixate on them. Just watch them pass by and see what comes up. But you'll get better and better at that as time goes by. And be patient with yourself and graceful with yourself. You don't become a Buddhist monk overnight, but like, it's a continual work and a balance, just to take the time out to do that for yourself, because no one's going to tell you to do it other than you. Like, you have to decide that for yourself. And it's like, if you decide to watch a movie out of pleasure or like just for fun, like be graceful with yourself in that. Like, how often do I actually take time to watch a movie? Like right now I'm taking time to watch a movie, and it's okay. I'll make up for it later, and maybe tomorrow I won't watch a movie and I'll do something more productive and read a book or work on my podcast or whatever. It's just like, watch the way in which we talk to ourselves, and like as that changes, like watch our life change, and watch what we do change, and like how we manage our time change, and what we choose to focus on change. Like a big one I've been working with lately is like, how much am I talking about other people, and like what purpose is that serving? Like just drama or gossip or that type of shit. Of what am I choosing to focus on? What am I putting my energy towards? Is it productive, or is it stagnant? Is it holding me back? Is it taking me deeper into low vibrations, depressed way of looking at things, stuff like that? Of keeping that in check on a daily basis, man, is so key to living a healthy life. It's just like that inner chatter we got going on. Like, how are we talking to ourselves? Like, being graceful when we want to guilt trip the shit out of ourselves for like eating a chocolate ice cream cone or something, like just like little things like we get hung up on, when it's just like, dude, you're doing the best you can with the knowledge you have at your disposal. So like, be forgiving with yourself, and like be open to setbacks, but get right back up where you left off.
Yeah, that's really well put. One thing I noticed quite early on was I went on a trip with my other half, not well, about a year ago now. And usually when we go on these trips, and be the tourist, I guess. We're always rushing around for some reason. And I've sort of picked up photography as a bit of a side hobby, because I like the path I take from taking a photo to editing it, and I just like that creativity of it. And I took my camera on one of these trips, and after self-reflecting on it, just having my camera there meant that we slowed right down. Instead of rushing from point A to point B, we slowed down. So I was trying to work out if I could take a photo of anything, and then the whole trip ended up being so relaxed at a point where we ended up going for a drink in a place we wouldn't usually stop off and have a drink. We would just walk straight past to get to where we were going. And the whole trip was, I would say, one of the best. It wasn't even a great place that we went to, but the whole trip was one of the best sort of experiences that we've had together, because it was just so, everything just was slowed down and there was no rush. And then you sort of think, well, why is everything always a rush to get point A to point B, to do point B as fast as you can and then to get to point C, rather than point A to point B? The journey itself is the experience, right? So the reason I'm saying that is, what I've noticed is just identifying where improvements can be made, and identifying different experiences that you have and what they actually mean, and are they good for you? Do they feel good for you? Do they make you feel bad? Just identifying it is a great starting place for anything, because it's self-awareness, right? It's that you are identifying that something's not aligning right with you, and why is it not? But I see a lot of people, and myself included in the past, I would just rush around, not feel good, feel clunky, and I just wouldn't even think about why. I would just have this bit of a, I don't know, like a clunky feeling about myself. But I think that was a great eye opener, because since that I identified that, I started going through my life and then picking up more stuff and different things. And then when I'm having these conversations with people, like you mentioned early on in the podcast, that you learn lessons sometimes which you don't even realize you've learned until you're put in a situation where that lesson can be put into place. So
Such a paradox, man.
I know,
And
right? So this conversation's been amazing for me, because it's put a lot into sort of perspective for me, and where certain things sit in my life. So I want to just say thank you for what you've done today.
thank you guys. It's been an honor. And, I think what you were just saying there, Cam, just flowing through life and like not trying to be a control freak and be in control of everything. Like it's such a paradox to think that like the greatest trips we could ever plan are the ones that go unplanned, or like where we just do things spontaneously, where it's not like we have it all set out, like we have this like spreadsheet of like we're going to be there at this time and like this log, and we got to be there at the next place at this time. It's like that just causes more stress, and it's like unneeded when you could just enjoy your time there and like just be present. That's the hardest lesson in life. It's like, what do they say? Looking back on the past breeds depression or anxiety, or depression, I believe, because you're resentful about what could have gone right in the past. And then if you're focused on the future, you're getting anxious about what could happen in the future. But if you're present, you're not worried about any of that. You're just enjoying life as it comes to you,
Yeah, it's the power of now, right?
Yeah. Eckhart Tolle, great book.
Yeah. So,
But thanks, guys. It's been an honor.
well, thank
enjoyed it.
you.
Cheers, Andre.
Yeah,
I think we should definitely do this again. I think, because
for sure.
yeah, me and Aaron are on a journey. You're obviously on a journey as
Oh.
well. So when we have certain conversations, I always feel like it'd be great to come back to them, a few months at a time, because I'd
Yeah.
like to see where you've progressed on your journey, and obviously I'd like to show you where we've gone on ours as well.
Beautiful. Love to be a part of it, guys.
So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks Andre for being on.
Cheers, guys.